Hello, everyone. Welcome to the North Carolina Blue Wave. And we're talking with Democratic candidates who are shaping the future of North Carolina. I'm your host, Kara Pearson, chair of the Robeson County Democratic Party. And today's special guest is Kathy Batt, a candidate for North Carolina State Senate District 24. And today we will dive into her vision for the future of Robeson County. Thank you so much for joining us, Kathy Batt.
Thank you, Kara. I really appreciate it.
Can you start by telling everyone a little about yourself, your background, and how you were inspired to run for North Carolina Senate?
Yes. Um, I was a Marine brat. My father was a Marine aviator. And when I was 10 years old, we lived in Cherry Point, North Carolina. I told him I wanted to grow up and be a helicopter pilot. And he told me, you can do anything you want if you study and play sports. So I did that. And I got an ROTC scholarship, went to University of Florida. Eventually, I went to artillery school and then graduated from flight school. And I was an official Army helicopter pilot. And my first duty station was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And because I had gone through field artillery school and was an aviator, I could adjust fire on my own from the helicopter. So when Grenada kicked on, I got to go to combat because I was the only pilot that could do that. And I had to get, well, not me, but the Army had to get special permission for me to go because women were barred from combat arms at wartime. So I did get that permission, and I went down to Grenada, and that was my first big step in my career, and that led to all kinds of different things. Like I ended up teaching tactics at the aviation school, and then after that, I went to test pilot school, and then I went to accident investigator school, and then I went to Korea. And in Korea, I was the first woman to get a company in an attack helicopter battalion. I commanded the maintenance battalion because I was a test pilot. So I did that. We supported the Korean Army, and that was a real adventure. I really enjoyed that. So when I came back, went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and from there I went to my second war, which was the first Gulf War, and I deployed over there with the Air Cav. And for a short period of time, I was the only test pilot in OH-58, it's a small helicopter, for 3 divisions. So I was really busy. So after that, I came back and I left the Army and I went into reserves after that. But I flew commercially for 4 years. I did long line work, which means, like flying buckets for fire and putting air conditioners on buildings and flying for the TV news and stuff. And then after that, I joined the FBI, and I was an FBI special agent with the criminal division for 4 years, for 20 years, excuse me, and I retired out of that. So here I am. My husband got a job here in Pembroke, North Carolina. I have a lot of family around this area, so we moved up here, and that's why I'm here in Lumberton.
Yes.
So why am I running for office? Because I have always believed in democracy. I've served it my whole life. And I believe that there should be at least two people in every race. And when I realized there wasn't two people in the race, I signed up to run. And education became my big focus. And while I was campaigning, economic development of this area became my second focus. So that's why I'm running.
Nice, nice, nice. So now, for those who are not familiar, can you explain the role of the state senate and how it differs from the House and county commissioners?
Yes. Well, it's easy to explain the difference between the county commission and the state senate. The county commissioners have their fingers on the pulse of the county, like right here in the county. The senate is 3 counties in this particular district, 24. It's 3 full counties. So the focus for a senator would be on all 3 counties and have a broader range of interest and focus. And the House would be has smaller sections, and they would have a more narrow focus and be able to focus more directly on issues within their smaller district. So the county commission is really local. The House is a slightly larger area, and the Senate is a much larger area. That's it.
So now we've talked about your motivation and what inspired you to run. What particular changes are you passionate about bringing to Robeson County through your service in the Senate?
Well, usually I talk about public education because that is such a crisis. It is the biggest line item on the budget, and the public education fund is being defunded by giving the money to the private vouchers, private school vouchers, and that's bad for a number of reasons. Number one, which goes into economic development. This District 24 is the largest landwise and the poorest of all Senate districts in the entire state. So we have some major critical problems with funding, schools being one of them. And how does that tie in with economic development? We can't develop even economically if we don't have a sound education base. Robeson County alone has 37 schools. Scotland and Hope County have, I believe, 12 and 14 respectively. Scotland County has already had to consolidate schools. Robeson County, with many more cuts, is going to face some serious questions about whether they can keep all 37 schools open. And that's a problem. We need the schools because it can take you an hour to drive across Robeson County. There are towns that don't have high schools that their high schoolers need to ride a bus for 40 to 50 minutes to go to high school. And that's one way. So that's a long bus ride. And in an economically depressed area, there's a lot of them can't afford to have cars or pay the gas to drive back and forth 5 days a week. So this is all wrapped in together. The dispersion of the population across a large area, extremely rural in some places, lack of access to nearby schools. And when it comes down to it, what we need is not less funding for education. We need more because the public schools are funded by the state per capita student at about $7,500. Countywide, it's different based on your property tax base. But these three counties in my district all have low property tax bases. And excuse me. And that's a problem because the supplement that they can add to it is so much lower than the supplement in Mecklenburg or Wake County or some of the other more wealthy counties who can weather the storm with cuts or funding, diminishment. And what public school also loses out on is those students who go to private school and take that $7,500 with them. That's covering that. Some of that cost covers fixed costs for the buildings and the school buses and the chairs and tables and cafeterias, all that stuff, school teacher pay. They're taking it going to Cumberland County because there aren't that many private schools in this area. And that money's leaving our county. And it's not coming back, even if the student loses the right to go to that private school. The private school keeps the voucher money, and now public school has to teach that child free for the rest of the semester or year. So,
That's a great topic. I want to elaborate on that. So what is your position on vouchers and how would you advocate for better funding in those schools that you're talking about?
well, I think the public funding of private schools should end. Private school is not the enemy. My husband went to all private school. I don't think he ever went to a public school, and he's turned out just fine. But I went to all public schools, and you look at my background, I did just fine. The problem with public schools is that they've been whittling away at the money for a long time and whispering, "Oh, failing public schools," but it's failing because they've starved it to death. And we need to get money back into it. Let parents who want their children to go to private school pay for it. It'd be like saying, I want to learn how to golf. And then you go to the public school, public golf course, and they have free lessons. You go, oh, I don't really want to go here. I'm going to go to this expensive golf course, and I want the county to pay for me to get golf lessons at this expensive golf course. That's what we're talking about. You want something extra, you pay for it. This is and when your children get thrown out of private school, they're not going to have a place to go if we close the public schools. And why didn't the vouchers work before? Why weren't they all taken? because those students who like qualified for the voucher could not be or would not be accepted to a private school because the private schools are not forced or coerced in any way into taking a student that they don't want. There's no accountability whatsoever. So all those vouchers that those kids got, I mean, over the past couple of years, all three counties had more students, more vouchers for some private schools than they had students. And it's exactly why I just said. Maybe the student was there for a few weeks and got thrown out, or maybe the voucher went there and they didn't accept the student and then just didn't turn the money back in. Was that fraud? I don't know, but it's bad accountability, and that would need to be changed. But I would take all of the public money out. Now, if they want to fund it some other way, like maybe all that corporate income tax that they're cutting, they could like divert some of that to the voucher program. That would be fine. But to take it away from public schools that we need, because even working in a convenience store these days requires some level of formal education. I mean, everything is computerized, the gas pumps, I mean, everything. To expect a child to grow up and get a good job on the education that they would be lacking, this county, this district is never going to grow. And that's what we need to like rethink this. And that Leandro Act, so a lot of people know what it is, some people don't. It was extra money from the state to rural counties that had a low property tax base, which is the very definition of District 24. And we were supposed to get a lot of that money. Well, I think we need to do that again. I think we need to reenact that. I think the Supreme Court, packed with Republicans, made the wrong decision. I think they made it based on purely politics, not law. And I think that we need to start over and get that done. Because if North Carolina wants to move forward, that's the way to do it. Education is the start. There's a lot of other things that need to go into it, but education, education, education.
Yeah, so that was great what you said about education, but I wanted to get more about what sets you apart from your opponent, Danny Britt, in this race, and why should Robeson County residents vote for you versus your opponent?
Well, I believe that whatever he has done in the past that was good, and I'm not saying he hadn't done good stuff, the specific needs of this specific district have not been met. Um, like because it is such a rural, like agricultural, low property tax base area, we need, in addition to things like buildings, built and roofs put on, we need that. We need more of that. That's the thing. And we need more money into our public schools. We need somebody who's going to focus on what we need. And we have one hospital in Robeson County. We have one hospital in Scotland County. And that's why Robeson and Scotland County are at the bottom of the healthcare outcomes. Robeson County is 100 out of 100. Scotland County is 98 out of 100. Hope County is a bright spot. It's 57 out of 100. So that's pretty close to average. But they're tucked up right underneath Fayetteville, and they can use their medical facilities. Whereas if you don't have insurance in Scotland County or Robeson County, there's only one place you can go for emergency medical care or any kind of medical care if you have no insurance. And that is those on one doctors you got, there's one. Now, there are some urgent care that take Medicaid. Not all urgent care takes Medicaid, but some do. And so if you have Medicaid, then you can get some maybe some prenatal care or something like that. And that's something we need to expand is healthcare into like the poorer sections, the people who don't have insurance. We need to expand Medicaid because if we want those children to grow up, they need early intervention. We need to take care of the mothers who are pregnant, so that their babies are born healthy and that their babies get adequate nutrition and educational stimulus. We need to take care of people more. And that's the difference between me and my opponent, who is focusing on like going to Paris to see about getting like like sports teams here. I'm not saying that's a bad thing for North Carolina. I'm saying it's a bad thing for Robeson, Hoke, and Scotland County because we need so much more before we start worrying about going to Paris to get, major sporting events here. That our economic development has to start pretty low because we got to like really work on that education, and we've got to work on things that like in Roland and Maxton and Red Springs, their roads, like you can look around Pembroke and Lumberton, the roads here look pretty good. The buildings look pretty good. You go out there, you go down to Fairbluff, it looks like nobody's taken care of it in a long time. And we need to focus on that. And I don't see that being focused on. I'm focused on our district. And yeah, I know you got to politic and work with people to give something to get something. I'm willing to do that. I was an FBI agent. I can tell you that there were backroom negotiations on plea deals. I had 30, I arrested 30 people for a case, and like the negotiations didn't always go the way I wanted it, but I went for it. It was my job, and that's what I would do there. I would work to get as much as I could get to the poorer sections here while not neglecting the other sections, which means we have to stop cutting taxes for just the time being, like maybe for like 10 years until we can bring everybody up and get that economic ball rolling. Because when I was at Fort Bragg, Lumberton was a place we came to buy things. We came here to shop. It was right off of 95, like heading down, like my folks in Florida, we would stop in Lumberton, and the Lumber River was here. We came there. It was a different face in 1984. Well, I guess it was 82, 83, 84, 85. It looked different. There was more stuff going on here. We need to get back to that so that we can be more self-sustaining, and then we won't need so help. But we need to get to that self-sustaining point. So that's what I would bring. I would try to bring that energy and the vitality back, try to get the focus on the smaller towns in all three counties because, Hope County has got 5 points out there. I mean, you got Gibson and Laurel Hill. A lot of Scotland County is doing better than the rural parts of Hope County, but everybody needs a little bit of help. And we can't just throw money at the situation like piecemeal. We got to have a plan, and we got to plan this money out and build and not just spot check here and there because then that place fades while someplace grows. We need to grow it. We need to grow up from the bottom so that we can keep going. That's what I would do.
Awesome. You mentioned working together with other people. How would you work with the elective officials, both in the Senate and local levels, to build that consensus that you were talking about and to push the policies that benefit Robeson County and the other rural areas that you just mentioned?
Well, you know, county commissioners, like they kind of need the legislature. And I know that there was a legislature passed a law that said that county commissioners can't override some of the things that the legislature has done. So that kind of would give me some back to talk to the county officials to try to get them to negotiate because we're so divided right now. Some Republicans, I'm sure, wouldn't even talk to me, but we have a lot of the undecided, the unaffiliated. And I think that would be a place to start, to get consensus. And then from those people, move out and get consensus from all. Like, I'm a pretty conservative Democrat. I used to be a Republican. And, you know, I consider the far left to be, not as dangerous as the far right, which scared me out of the Republican Party. But I think I could even work with them. I talk to those people almost every day when I'm out in public, and like some of them get pretty angry, but I just, well, we just got to talk about it because we all live in the same town, we all live in the same place. We should get along. We find some way to get along. I mean, it it would be something that I would have to work on to find something that they would be interested in talking to me about. So it would be on me to get their cooperation.
Awesome. So, after you're elected, what are your top priorities? I think you've already mentioned some. But what are your other top priorities that align with the needs of the residents of Robeson County?
Well, really, women's health rights are big. Once you start cutting, like putting restrictions on health, and it's known, I mean, and this is true, Black women have the worst health outcomes of any gender, race, or anything. And that is in maternity mortality also. And to ignore that, to say, oh, well, we need to put restrictions on women's health care has already caused, the rhetoric surrounding the law that's passed isn't bad, but the rhetoric surrounding it, we need to support that. That's one of my first things would be getting message out there, supporting, help for Black women, whether or not it doesn't even matter in some cases how much money or what kind of job the Black woman has. She could be like a medical doctor and not get health care like a white woman would. It's true. I mean, somebody says, "Oh, that's not true." It is absolutely true. And if you call me, I will point out. I will tell you where to look it up, and I would just let you look it up yourself, and you wouldn't even have to take my word for it. But you couple that with the long-standing like economic disparities between white, blacks, and lumbies, with the white people sort of being on the top, and Lumbee and Black people sort of kind of having to fight for the crumbs. You look at that and like that adds to it, and poverty adds its own like trauma, which also affects when you're pregnant and you have like, how are you going to support this baby, how are you going to feed this baby, how are you going to take care of yourself. That needs to be addressed. And in addition to those two things, that is, I would definitely focus on that, because if you want to help people, if everybody wants babies to be born healthy, and instead of just talking the talk, we need to walk the walk. And that means focusing on Black communities and Black women and increasing their access and treatment in our medical system. So I think that's extremely important.
Right. We're going to switch gears just a second. So, Robeson County has historically faced high unemployment and poverty rates that you mentioned earlier. We are one of the most impoverished areas in the state. What specific policies do you plan to initiate or advocate for once you're in the Senate to address these economic challenges that we have in this area? And how would you, I guess, help create job opportunities for this area?
Well, first of all, because Robeson, Hoke, and Scotland County all are poor, it is hard to attract like a large business with sophisticated people that would work there, because we don't have the workforce for it, and we don't have the education system or the healthcare system. So we really got to work on that first, to build that back up. We used to have it, we got to build it back up. But now you're looking at your small businesses. We got a lot of small business here that don't survive. And I know that there are some nonprofits that are working there to help small businesses survive. I know Sarah Tabor, I've talked to her. She's running for agricultural secretary. She's been working with small farmers, small acre farmers, and she's had great success in her programs. We need to bring those here and start working with people who have a small business. Like, you ask most people who start a small business, well, how are you going to build? How are you going to be more efficient? And they really don't have any idea about marketing. So I really believe that the government needs to step in. I mean, Pembroke has a hub. They have a small business hub that helps. We need to have that in every one of these small communities, help for that. And we need more money to help. Like, if you got to get these streets fixed and the facades in these little towns so people want to stop there, like on the way to the beach through some of the towns down there on the 75 corridor, people are driving by like, don't pull off here. We need to improve our look. I mean, just like the people here in Robeson County and Scotland County are great people. And I've enjoyed knocking on doors and talking to all of them. But when a person drives by in a car, it does not look inviting. And we got to do that. And that would be a huge thing for the local businesses. And yeah, it's going to take money. It's going to cost tax money, but we got to get it done. I mean, or we're going to lose it all. We're going to like lose those communities. And where are those people going to go with, housing crisis as everybody? It's just something that is going to cost money, but we got to do it. That's what I would push. We had a $2 billion surplus, and we're talking about furthering our way to to help people put their children in private school who do not need the help. And you know, heaven forbid. So it's that's what I would do.
So you mentioned earlier that you work for a law enforcement agency, the FBI. And as you're aware, the in this area, crime rates and drug related offenses have been a concern. How do you plan to work with law enforcement agencies to address the public safety resources and policies in the Senate to reduce the crime and get support from the community with crime prevention programs?
Well, that's a good question. When I was in New York and when I moved to Miami, but then when I was in the FBI, I was on task force that included detectives and other HHS was in one of them. So I've had a lot of experience working with police departments, and I've had no problem with them. My husband, who was in the Army, that's where we met. He's now the CFO out at Pembroke, UNC Pembroke, and he has the police officers out there. They work for him, and so we talk about it. Sometimes he asks me "What do you think about this?" And so I already know vicariously a lot more about the police department, the sheriff's department, what they do really well, what they need to work on. Because it's law enforcement changes with the criminal environment, right? And what you did 5 years ago isn't what you're going to do today. And so they're all morphing. And I would try to really be very supportive of moving us forward and bringing everybody together, getting all the police departments to work together. And really, they're doing that. And it's becoming like my Pembroke is working with UNCP's police officers, and now with the problems got out at Western North Carolina, I know the sheriff's department and the Pembroke and the UNCP, there's some police officers out there. I would definitely support all of that, and I would do anything I could to help them with training, assets, and just day to day support with talking to each other. Or even if they needed federal help, I would help with that. That's what I do.
Awesome. So last week, um, well, let me back up. We're in the midst of hurricane season. And of course, last week was Hurricane Helene that came through North Carolina. In this area, anytime we hear the word hurricane, we are jittery. So because of that, and because of the two hurricanes that we have, Matthew and Florence, that impact this community um, tremendously, what plans do you have to advocate to improve storm resilience and flood management in the North Carolina Senate? And how would you work to protect vulnerable communities from natural disasters?
That's a tough question. Right now, I've been to a number of group meetings with talking about disasters, and I'm going tomorrow to Robeson County Community College to meet with a group that works with this, and it's something that they have been doing since probably before the Hurricane Matthew and all the devastation, and it's a really great group. Um, and I've been there talking to them, and from that group, I know that the 95 repairs have been targeted on the the floodgates to repair the road, prepare the road for floodgates to put in, and that's going to be the first line of defense. So I know that's already in the works and doing that. The South Lumberton and holy cow down at Fair Bluff, over in Maxton, south of that too, and uh, Lumberton, Laurinburg, that area, they've had flooding too. There's so much that needs to be done, and cutting disaster relief would be disastrous. I mean, you know, I know right now that FEMA's rule, which has nothing to do with the Senate, North Carolina Senate, it's a federal thing, but they're saying that if you get a historic flood and a lot of damage, they'll help you once, but then you can't move back in and get FEMA insurance. I'm not sure that that's workable. I would look into like advocating for like sustainable like disaster aid, because as we go into climate change, regardless of how, nobody could say it's not happening. You can argue that man is involved or not, but you can't argue that it's not getting worse, because demonstrably it is. We've got to be ready, and to pick a community and say that community deserves help, but this community doesn't. We can't do that. We're the United States of America. We're North Carolina, and we're, Robeson County. Like, we gotta, Hope County, Scotland County, we gotta take care of each other. We can't just go, oh yeah, well, they're poor, so we don't need to help them. And then people talk about resources. These lower income areas use far fewer resources than the higher income areas. The higher income there's more water, electricity, the roads, they have more roads per square foot of house. I mean, you know, they're it, to protect a higher income area is more expensive per person than to protect a lower income area. So people need to remember that when they go, oh, poor people don't pay very much, but they don't get much either. So, you got to balance that out. That would be my push to continue working with these groups and even the environmental groups, because environments can be so important to preventing some of this stuff, like some of this devastation in Western North Carolina. There are things that probably could be done, like with the environment, like ecology, to help mitigate that in the future. So we got to look at all that.
You were talking about earlier healthcare and issues regarding receiving healthcare in Hope, Scotland, and Robeson. Kind of want to circle back, but in regards to the substance abuse crisis that has been devastating and impacting the area, Robeson, Hope, and Scotland.
Yeah.
What strategic programs do you plan to support in the Senate to expand addiction treatment services and prevent substance abuse, particularly in underserved communities, which are really being hit the hardest?
Well, the reason this, that everybody knows instinctively, that the reasons the bigger problems are in the poorer, underserved area is because they're poorer and underserved. And opportunities are less here. And people say, oh, well, you can just move someplace else and get a job. But if you come from a family that doesn't have a lot of money and their sole asset is their house here, that's all they've got, and this is all are you going to move to Charlotte to get a job? How are you going to support yourself while you're trying to get that job? Same like with even closer places. And the poverty is its own trauma. And there's depression that goes along with that, which is a real like lead in to substance abuse as people fight to feel better. And on the way to feeling better, it ends up being worse. And as the desperation, like, and feeling that you don't have anything to lose, that's really, we need. So like these other things we've talked about, working on the education, working on the economy, that's really going to be the long-term answer. The short-term answer, we found that the war on drugs is not effective. Like, we have wasted more money on that than we could have if we had just given people who have substance abuse treatment and help. And some of the substance treatment abuse centers that are like group homes and stuff like that, they're not wanted in most areas, because that kind of condenses people that have problems in one area. So, we need to look at, can we find a way to help treat them closer to their home, through programs and outreach. Especially, we've got the tools, we've got internet, we've got all kinds of things. We've got people, that are willing to help. And would that cost money? Yeah, but it would save money, because it's going to be cheaper than like outfitting police departments with military vehicles, and armament that, costs thousands of dollars when we could just, set up treatment programs and help people. And that would reduce the demand. And then there'd be, that's what we got to do. We got to start at the ground and like stop trying to like force our way from the top down. We got to like take take some of that pressure off of people and give them hope that they can go. Because my cousin Perry Owen, he lives in Charlotte,
Mhm.
showed me a statistic that only like 1.4% of people in Robeson County ever get out of poverty. 1.4%. I think you said something like the average in this area is like 4 something percent. That is appalling. That is absolutely appalling. And it we need to change that. We need to help people out of poverty, not keep them in it. So, with cousins like that, I got, I'm gonna have great ideas. I've got people I can call. I've talked to endocrinologists. I've like got my cousin who's like a social worker. My aunts and cousins, a lot of them are retired school teachers. I got all of them. So I got me people. I things I can bounce off of people, and I'm gonna try my best to work on it for this district.
Awesome. So voting rights and having access to the ballot has been a huge issue in North Carolina, especially now that we have um, voting IDs and making it harder for people to actually vote. What are your thoughts on access to the ballot in general?
Well, I have no problem with voter ID law. What it's being carried to a ridiculous extreme. Like they can get a card, but oh, then when you get there, if your signature doesn't match that, and like when you're signing that little thing, you tell me whose signature looks the same on that little tiny line that they're at the DMV. You're like, oh, was I to sign that? Are you kidding me? That is ridiculous. That is like the old, poll tax thing. And this whole thing where you have to photocopy your driver's license or photo ID to send it into your mail-in ballot, that is absurd. I mean, that is absolutely absurd. I mean, you've registered to vote. That's how you got your mail-in ballot. Let's, call it quits. They got that mail-in ballot. If it doesn't look right, then and like the places you have to sign on that, it has to be this and that. You have to hold your mouth a certain way before you turn it in. That's ridiculous. So just showing an ID, got no problem with that. The whole, making it murky, that's what I have a problem with. Now, I think early voting is terrific. And one day, one Sunday, that's good. I don't understand why we can't do both Sundays, but they don't want to. So that, but making restrictions that make it harder to get out. And like we should be making mail-in ballots easier for those people who have mobility issues or live in like in rural areas and have transportation issues, because nobody here in Robeson County is getting on the bus and going to a poll site because there isn't a bus. Like you can call somebody, hey, can you pick me up? But that's not the answer. Not the answer for this district. It might be the answer in a city, but it is not the answer in a poor district, which I'm talking about right now. I don't want people to say, oh, well, in Mecklenburg, well, great. You do it in Mecklenburg. It ain't working for us here in the poorer counties. Like you show up, you vote, you're allowed to sign up with motor. In fact, I believe every person, when they turn 18, should automatically be registered to vote. Every single person who's a citizen. Everyone should. You shouldn't. And then if you choose not to vote, I mean, I don't think we should send stormtroopers to your house to drag you out to the polls, but I do think that there you go, you've got it. Everybody's got it. It's not a, it's not a, oh, should I sign up? Can I vote? Yeah, just
Right.
get your ass down there. And this whole thing like, oh, inactive after X number of years, I do actually understand a grain of that because when people move, they don't always update with the board of elections. They don't think, oh, I should is notifies the board. So I understand, going through, seeing who's alive, who's dead, somebody's moved. Like the guy who used to live in this house, he rented his house. And it's funny, his last name is Bass, Bass. And his two first names are the same, his middle name and first name are the same as my brother's name. So sometimes I accidentally open his mail. But he's still registered at this house. And so, but I live right, he's like basically across the street. So that's not really a problem because we are in the same district, except, and I got to tell him this, he's in District 7 and I'm in District 8. So if he votes for District 8, I believe he will have committed voter fraud. So I'm actually going to have to go over and knock on his door and ask him to check on that because that could be a problem. If somebody, but he's a Republican, so they probably won't care. So, but stuff like that. So there's a grain of, I understand why they're doing it, and that doesn't bother me. But it's the fact that there's a pall hanging over it. We're suspicious now, and that's because of all the rhetoric and disinformation. And if that hadn't been there, and they purged, not purged, if they had updated, like we should use the word update. They updated the roles, but still, I I know a guy in Scotland County. I looked him up one day and I found that he was dead. But I'd seen him the day before and I thought, well, that's really quick. Maybe I should call his widow. But he wasn't dead. So, a lot of people in this area have the same name. Like
Right.
there's a lot of Hunts with James or whatever the name would be. There's a lot of the same names here. Maybe not for you and I, but I've got a weird name, Bat. I think I'm probably the only one in this district. Um, and Esterhaus, my husband, he's the only Esterhaus here. But like if you're Hunt or Grady or Lockley or one of those names, it could happen. So you should go look it up because maybe somebody with your same name died and somebody got it wrong. So that's
Going back to the theme of we are the um, most impoverished county in the state. What are your thoughts on affordable housing, which is hard to find in this area, even though we are one of the most impoverished, and how to tackle that?
well. There's a big not in my backyard, even though we're rural. There's some affordable housing doesn't really work for people if you stick it out way in the boondocks where nobody has access to jobs or transportation because if somebody needs affordable housing, they don't need a 40-mile car trip, 40-minute car trip, to get to a job because maybe there's only one car for that family, or maybe gas gets expensive, and so it needs to be near a more built up area. And then you get the not in my backyard people and like, oh, it's going to reduce my property values. But if people looked at it like, oh, where are we going to find people to work here? Well, maybe if they lived near here, we would have people who could get those jobs and show up on them regularly. So we should trade that off economic development as well as an economic good for the area, as well as um, affordable housing for people that need it just starting off. I mean, oh, they're drug dealers that are buying it. Let me tell you, from my experience in law enforcement, a lot of drug dealers don't have a problem making a down payment on a house in your fancy neighborhood. I mean, we're not talking about drug dealers living in your neighborhood. We're talking about people that, might not have, people who, for no fault of their own, aren't as well educated. There's all kinds of things that can happen to people that prevent them from completing a good education or developing skills. And we need to help those people. And I throwing them out in the middle of the swamp, like, okay, find your way back. And that's the problem. It's not my backyard. So that really has to be legislated, where it's gonna have to be forced. And but we can't build like really ugly things either. So there's gotta be the community is gonna get a say in it, but there shouldn't be an abject no. You shouldn't we should be able to get beyond that to solve this problem. And because it is the not in my backyards near the built up areas that are causing this.
Right. Is is there a issue or a concern that we haven't talked about that you would really want voters to know, that you plan to advocate for, or that you just want to talk about in general?
Yeah, I had flyers go around about me lying about me wanting to think girls should compete against boys and that, I think sex change operations in kids are like a-okay with me. All of that's a lie. They got my gender right. I am she and her. And they got my name right. I am Kathy Batt. But the other stuff's wrong. It's like I was a competitive athlete, and I think a person who goes through puberty as a male probably shouldn't like compete. But I don't think that should be legislated. I think that should be up to the sports governing bodies because you look at sports like equestrian. What difference does it make what gender you are or whether you've transitioned or chess? That's considered sport. It could be like I don't know if there's professional cornhole. How could that make any difference? I mean, it should be the sports governing bodies that's come up with that. And then I do think that, if somebody has a concern about who's in the bathroom, like this has been around a long time before this. And I mean, the kids getting beat up in the bathroom. And like when I was in high school, there was a bathroom monitor in there, and that was in 1976. So it didn't happen yesterday with trans kids. That's a school problem, and that's something that they gotta work with, and we gotta stop getting all hysterical about stuff. But as for like sex change operations in children, that's not happening. I talked to an endocrinologist. I'm going to tell you what the number one gender affirming surgery is on boys, and it's breast reduction surgery. And I'm laughing, but it's not funny because it can happen. There's a genetic component to it. But what if a boy, there's also like a medical like thing, if they have cancer or like an autoimmune disease and they have to take one of the steroids that not just, I mean, not an anabolic steroid, but like prednisone or something, that can mess with your hormones too. And as somebody who had to take it, I can tell you that it does cause an increase in breast size, and it will do it in men and women. So in boys, if they've taken that and they start developing breasts for whatever reason, like that is considered gender affirming surgery. And you want to get rid of all that? I would take show of hands with the number of boys that want to like have to live with that, going to the pool or playing sports and like, I, you know, but we feel bad for boys, but we should feel compassion for girls too, because the most of the rest of it is because of birth deformities or accident. Like a girl developing only one breast, or a kid that I grew up with lived next door to me had two sets of nipples. Like that that would be some sort of like secondary sexual. So if we start banning this stuff with no like doctor intervention, which is why I say leave it to the doctor and the parents for children. And for adults, get out of their business. If that person's an adult and they got a doctor, let them deal with that. Like we got to get out of this. The doctors, the parents, like people, oh, well, the children are telling them, like, no, they're not. Like, no doctor is going to take a check from a small child like to do surgery. It's just not, it doesn't happen. And I would be really interested if somebody could show me one that has, because it is against every AMA and the other endocrinology. They do not do it. And in fact, Donald Trump tried to get breast implants for his 15-year-old daughter Ivanka, and they wouldn't do it. And he has a lot of money. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. So if they're not going to do it on Ivanka Trump, they're not going to do it on your child, especially not secretly in the back room of the schoolhouse. That's just rhetoric, and we got to stop doing that. So that's the last thing I'm going to tell you. That's it.
The what message do you have for undecided voters, especially those that feel disconnected from politics in general?
Well, people say, "Oh, I'm not political," and that's because they're not thinking about what is being regulated now, and there's more and more being regulated. Like they're trying to end same-sex marriage. What difference does that make to anybody? Like what? Like, oh, I don't like gay people, so we should legislate against that. That is the exact opposite of not being political. That's throwing a person's life into the political arena when it has no business being in there. Like we need to get away from that. So that's what I would tell them. I'm like, just exactly what do you think political is? Like, should there be a public education system? Well, most people don't think that's political, but it has become now political. Even though it's in our Constitution of North Carolina, it's become a political hot potato between, members of the Republican Party, although I'm assured that not all of them think that that is exactly good, but yet they're all voting as a block, but they don't agree with it. They want me to know that they feel bad, real bad about that, but the whole majority has to vote together because that's the way it is. That shouldn't be the way it is. And that's what people need to know. Is like in the past, there were bipartisan, like people would cross lines when they felt something was wrong, but that isn't so much the case anymore. It's becoming with the super majority, especially my way or the highway. So you tell me what part of your life isn't up for grabs for that, and I'll tell you, you got no protections, none, but any part of your life. And you know, I read Project 2025, and we're not going to get in that here, but that that actually, if you read it, they want to put all the bureaucracy in the hands of one person, the president of the United States. All of bureaucracy on day one. They want to throw everyone out that is a career serviceman who's been service like civil servant, and put political appointees in. And like, look how well that worked with the first Trump administration. Like, and how many of them don't like him now? And it's that's for another day. Like little North Carolina Senator Kathy Batt wouldn't be able to solve that. So,
What role can residents in both Scotland, Hoke, and Robeson County um, do to help support your campaign and your vision for this district? What can we do to help you?
well, we got about 30 days before the actual election day. So if you want me to win, you got to vote for me. You got to get up off your boat. If you're not registered, you need to march down there to early voting and register and vote. Tell people anybody needs a ride, you need to give them a ride. Is We're coming down to the end, and I know I'm not well known in the area. I like got up off my couch in the middle of nowhere and said I was running, but I've researched the issues and I'm ready to serve North Carolina like I served the United States government. And your support is what I need. If you want a yard sign, that'd be great. I've got a few extra of those. If you want to help put out yard signs, I could use help with that. But mostly get people to vote for me. Actually vote, not just sit there and go, well, I don't like how this is going. She should win. And if she doesn't, well, that's a shame. It's a shame if you don't vote. And if you don't vote for me, at least you'll gotten up off your butt. But voting a straight blue ticket is the only way, I think, to turn the ship around and get back to sane governance and have a two-party system back and forth. Like one party having a supermajority has not worked for North Carolina, and it will not work for the United States of America.
Um, could you tell us how to learn more about your campaign, your website, social media?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm NC Senate District 24. On Facebook, you're just gonna have to, I don't, it's got a whole bunch of numbers in it, but if you go onto Facebook, I'm at North Carolina, Kathy Batt for North Carolina Senate. You'll find me there. I've got a page, it's just Kathy Batt. And my website is BATT Batt, it's my last name, number four, Senate.com, batforsenate.com. You'll find a lot of good information on there. You'll see all the stuff I've done, and I'm behind in posting things, but I'm gonna be doing some of that, today and tomorrow. I'm gonna be at the Robeson County Regional Fair tonight, and so you could come talk to me then. I've got a big Batgirl cutout because that's how I grew up being called Batgirl, and a dear friend of mine drew a picture of Batgirl, and so I've got it in all my stuff. So vote for Batgirl.
And they should reach out to you if they want you to come speak or meet someone in the
Absolutely.
community, any events,
You
just let Kathy know.
you got five people in a room. I'll come talk to them. I mean, because it's I don't. I don't really need to know what the corporations are doing. I can see that. I need to know what human beings on the ground are doing. And I'm very sympathetic to the unaffiliated because I used to be a Republican and now I'm a Democrat. And I understand, looking across and saying, I don't, I'm not sure where I fit. So I could definitely talk to you about that. I've got, a lot of experience making decisions, and you got to figure out what's important to you and vote for what's important for you and your children.
So thank you so much, Kathy Batt. Make sure you vote for Kathy Batt, Senate District 24. That's all the time that we have for this episode of North Carolina Blue Wave. Um, if you'd like to learn more about Kathy, you just heard it. We'll put her campaign stuff on the screen and visit her website. And don't forget to make your voice heard at the ballot box. So until next time, I'm your host, Kara Pearson, Chair of the Robeson County Democratic Party, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara.
You're
Thank you, Robeson
welcome.
County Democrats.